step there, because that's going to be the first key step. That's the foot in the door for Dick Cheney into this whole underground power structure that we find out comes out of 1950s, 1960s, actually comes out of the Cold War and the post-war, what physicists created in the 1940s when they invented the atomic bomb. And that invention of the atomic bomb changed the world into what it is today, with the emergence of the Cold War in the 1950s and 60s. And then what happened in the Cold War, which started a chain reaction to put people like, these heads of these industry companies, these savvy people in charge of these kind of operations. And then, he's working for these organizations kind of behind the scenes. And then another missing piece is, the whole Bush administration stuff, and the 9/11, also and we'll get into the continuity of government program, and then also how he became CEO of the Halliburton Company. But but really what we want to know is this is all Dick Cheney stuff. He's been involved in a lot of interesting seats, and has held a lot of interesting positions. But people really want to know more about this recent allegation, and I think I have the quote here, with David Grusch claiming. And Elizondo was asked about, whether this Dick Cheney thing, and he really did give a non-answer about that, which I thought was weird. If you find here, okay, here's the original post from UAP James. All right. I don't know if you guys can see this, but fuck. There, we're trying to get we're trying to get the to figure out whether Dick Cheney ran the head of this UFO file and UFO program. So there's this whole UFO allegation, right? That David Grusch is saying that Dick Cheney's at the top of this classified UFO pyramid. So yeah, this is Matt Taibbi, and talking to Walter Kern. And Walter Kern said he was talking to David Grusch, and David Grusch says that Dick Cheney was the guy who's the gatekeeper of the legacy UFO programs. And, I thought that's interesting, because there's kind of like the legacy UFO programs, of course, will have to go back to Manhattan Project, right? Manhattan Project, 1947, disbanded. So it was from 1942 to 1946. So it took them 4 years to develop, design, and make an atomic bomb from quantum theory. So with the right amount of funding, we can do the physics. I guarantee, we have the people today. And I want to talk about what's happened to the physics and sort of how it was locked down, so we can understand these legacy programs, and then look for, more evidence of how those might connect, because there's been lots of allegations of who's really running the UFO programs. Is Sean Kirkpatrick? Is Sean Kirkpatrick running the UFO program, guys? Is Ron Pandolfi, as people say, the CIA's weird desk operator, is Ron Pandolfi, the gatekeeper for the UFO program? Who's head of MJ12? If MJ12 is this real thing, that's what we want to know. So, yeah. So is Dick Cheney really Darth Cheney? The Sith Lord, right? Well, let's look into this because there's lots of people saying, well, there's heads of the weird desk, and then this Ron Pandolfi guy, who's that, and who are some of these other people. I don't know if this is the same Ronald Pandolfi as the head of the CIA's weird desk, but you know what? Because I have a different email on Jack Sarfati's email list for Mr. Ron Pandolfi. So I'd like to email this guy and see if he's one and the same, that would be connected to Berkeley Labs, because that's an interesting connection if he's also connected to our national laboratories. But it's just that he's applied math and computer research, computer science, computing sciences at Berkeley, California. So yeah, he's an applied math guy, computational research. So that's interesting. We go back to the Manhattan Project now, and we talk really about legacy UFO programs. One of the main ones that comes up is actually the people that designed the demon cores for the Manhattan Project. The one metallurgy contractor that was, in charge of all the metallurgy, top secret metallurgy programs for the government, knew all the science on the metals of how to make a ball of plutonium so they could build the demon core for the atomic bomb. So that, it started with this whole uranium enrichment plants where they mine this raw uranium out of the earth. You go to the parts in the Grand Canyon, you can still find these uranium mines. Go in there with a Geiger counter, and you can find uranium ore right there, and put it through an enrichment process. You could produce enriched uranium. Of course, it take a lot of money, and they built these two sites for the uranium enrichment and processing. Sorry, and one of those was the Hanford site. But this the Fat Man used a plutonium implosion type, and the plutonium is a little bit different for how they have to produce that. I'm not going to get into all the, but this is all declassified stuff. This is all the secrets that were, the Russians stole and were lost during this, 1950s, 1960s Cold War eras and everything. And then it moved beyond, of course, these weapons to hydrogen bombs, which were developed by Edward Teller and John Wheeler, who was one of the top metallurgists employed by the top metallurgy company, which did all this super top secret research for the Manhattan Project. And then, of course, was the Battelle Memorial Institute, right? So the Battelle Memorial Institute, if you look into it, they're based out of Columbus, Ohio, which is about 40 minutes from Dayton, Ohio, where Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is, where they allegedly brought the Roswell wreckage and everything in 1947. So you go from there to Battelle Memorial Institute, where there's rumors, and there's a whole website documenting this stuff called UFO Explorations and .com. And you know what? Oops, I spelled it wrong. I got an extra P in there. Explorations.com. Yeah, this guy is I don't know who this is or what that is, but Anthony Bragalia is the author of this site and has done a lot of these investigations into Battelle, which are on here. If you look up the article archive, he's got a ton of these articles on the Roswell memory metal and, the research that apparently was done and where that material went and where it's held today. And allegedly in pieces of the Roswell debris. And speaking of pieces of the Roswell debris, we're joined by Jared, who's got a actual sample of that, the arts parts debris, which matches the description of some of the materials that were recovered in Roswell. There's a variety of different type of materials that were allegedly reported by all these rural, ranchers and farmers out and the outskirts of Roswell, from Roswell to Corona, New Mexico, where the craft was. It's actually like a 2-hour drive out into the desert to the crash site if you go there. But apparently, there's all this memory metal research that's been done, and Anthony's done a very, awesome job of anyone of Pete putting these pieces together. I'd like to see him do more interviews and get on more podcasts and stuff. I think that would be great. And Battelle is a very interesting company, and what's most interesting about Battelle is that they manage all of our national laboratories. Okay. Brookhaven National Labs, Idaho National Labs, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories, University of California, Los Alamos National Labs. But surprisingly, Berkeley National Labs is not on here. So Berkeley's the only one that Battelle doesn't manage. And what's interesting is that Berkeley is managed by Ron Pandolfi. Or has connections to, and I don't know if this is, I don't think this is the same guy, because this guy's a computer guy and applied, but Ron does applied math, and he might do some, might be the same guy. But that's interesting if they, that Berkeley lab is, kind of outside of the Battelle management structure. It's not listed on their thing here. So we know that, Howard, according to a lot of Bergalia's research, a guy named Howard C. Cross was the of Battelle. I don't think you'll find him on here. Yeah, you won't find him on here. But if you look up Howard C. Cross, he's listed in a very interesting memo that was called the Pentacle Memorandum, which was found in J. Allen Hynek's notes after so I don't know if you guys know the whole UFO history story, but J. Allen Hynek, right, was the guy who was head of the U.S. Air Force's UFO program. And this picture is cropped, but Jack Valet is in the original photo of this, right? So let's find the original photo of Hynek and Valet, right? So that photo's cropped, but in the original photo, he's standing next to Jack Valet, who's a computer scientist that's gone out and recovered a lot of samples of UFO pieces from UFO crash sites, and saved them over the years until we've had the science to really look into them. And he provided Gary Nolan with those samples that Gary Nolan studied, which he said have isotopes that are unusual. It said they're not really usual on Earth. You'd have to specifically manufacture materials with these types of isotopes, unless they were made somewhere else in an off-alien world that had different isotope ratios. But that doesn't exclude the possibility that man made a lot of these technologies with different isotopes for other reasons. And some of those other reasons, we'll get into the technologies of why. It's mostly spintronics, which is like optical photonics. How it's the point where optics and photonics mix. And apparently UFOs have had a lot of fiber optics and other types of light photonic technologies built into them. If we imagine that they would use photonic quantum computers. But what's interesting about this photo, right, is that this is J. Allen Hynek, head of the U.S. Air Force's Project Blue Book investigation into UFOs. And he's he made friends with Jack Valet, and Jack Valet actually turned him out on some of the stuff with the investigations and the files that he brought him on. It's not all, there was a lot of bullshit that he was wasting his time with early on when he was younger, and he had a famous mishap when he did this press conference showing the hoaxers, that this kind of stuff's been recycled. This is like the Bob Lazar UFO of the original, the 1950s and stuff, was Otis Carr and stuff. And then this is Adamski, George Adamski's dentist lamp that he said was a flying saucer, and worked on the on some weird physics that could never be replicated, and had no real basis in any kind of mathematical consistency or theory of gravity. But still, nonetheless, this stuff was the I don't know, the horse, the snake oil of its era, I suppose. But J. Allen Hynek was the real guy, and he turned around after this conference where he said it was swamp gas. He used swamp gas as an explanation to get out of one of these files, and then he finally just admitted, hey, maybe we don't know and we have no idea, and I'm doing a disservice to this whole field by pushing these alternative narratives that yeah, it could be that. It was like this aha moment that we all hope Mick West will have, but he never quite has that. But what's interesting about that is if you look into Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the two scientists from Close Encounters of the Third Kind are based on, in that opening scene, they're based on Jacques Vallée and J. Allen Hynek in the movie. The two guys are based on them in real life. So there's the J. Allen Hynek character. I mean, there's the J. Allen Hynek character, and there's the Jacques Vallée character. So here they are in the movie Close Encounters in the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg. So he based the actual movie people on the real guys, which is pretty cool. Anyways, Jacques Vallée and Allen Hynek, definitely weren't part of some secret society to cover this up. But what's interesting is that they made friends, and then when J. Allen Hynek died, he left all his notes and his estate, everything. Jacques Vallée got all that stuff. In 1986. So around then, they found this Pinnacle memorandum, and the Pinnacle memorandum's like super weird, top secret UFO stuff, because the Pinnacle memorandum says that there's this. It gives a list of the people that are actually debriefed on the UFO stuff, and the top of that list is a guy named Howard C. Cross, who was, of course, the first director of the Battelle Memorial Institute. So it'd be interesting to look into what happened there thereafter. So this is crazy, because look at the timing of this, and no one's ever connected this before, but I want to point this out, right? The Pinnacle memorandum was written in 1953. Somehow it got into J. Allen Hynek's files through his, he was allowed this information working for the Air Force and got a hold of it. Learned that there's a second Project Blue Book, and that has this. There's another file that deals with the metal stuff for the UFO file, and all the metal stuff goes through this other company. It went through Battelle up until I'm going to look into all this stuff. We're going to get back to Dick Cheney and really dig into Dick Cheney, because wanted to make this more UFO stuff. But where was the thing I just had? I got all these files open, and I wanted to find the Pinnacle memorandum. Let's find the actual Pinnacle memorandum so we can read it, because this is an enigma in the UFO community. It's been buried, hard to find, but it lists. Yeah, this is it, and it lists these. So H.C. Cross, that's Howard C. Cross, B.D. Thomas, L.R. Jackson, W.T. Reed, R.J. Riepel. So I've never been able to actually find out who these people are, who these agents were that had these kinds of clearances. But this is apparently the Pinnacle Memorandum. It was found in J. Allen Hynek's notes. Jack Fillet made it public after, J. Allen Hynek died, which is the crazy thing. So J. Allen Hynek dies. Let's look at the timing of this. 1986. He dies 1986. What happens in literally the next 2 years after this in the UFO community? We have two things. The aviary. You're going to have to look up the UFO aviary and type in owl, condor, falcon. Yeah, this one, the second link, I think. Research list and the aviary unmasked. I don't know if that's the one. No, this one doesn't look like it. Let me see the aviary unmasked. Where was that one? Oh, it's Facebook, and I don't have Facebook anymore. Thanks to Mark Zuckerberg. But yeah, you can look this up. It's hard to find this stuff now because it's being buried in memory hold, but it's really key because I have it. If you go to boblazardebunked.com, you'll find this, because this is where I was going to, and I don't want to have to jump the gun on. I wanted to build up to this and lead up here, but it looks like I'm just going to have to blow my load. But Bob Lazar happens in 1988, 89, right? So Bob Lazar comes out publicly. But in 88, 2 years after this TV special comes on with UFOs in the Government Bible, and you have Captain Robert Collins, Condor, Ernest Keller Strauss, who was Hawk, Richard Doty as Sparrow, or some believe Falcon, Jack Verona as Raven, Ron Podolfi is apparently Pelican on this, and others say that Hal Puthoff was Owl, and what's his name? Ed Fouché was Albatross. But it's interesting because Bob Lazar comes out right after all that with his story saying, it's all at Area 51, and, I saw it, and this is where the UFOs are. And that takes the entire UFO community by storm, like massive disinformation, like sending everyone in that direction. And meanwhile, the timing of this is key, because this Pinnacle Memorandum has been absolutely buried about where the real stuff went and the real paper trail of it. Because the real UFO and legacy UFO program went to Battelle. And I'll argue that with the best researcher out there who wants to battle. And I'm going to get Anthony on some more podcasts to talk about this research, because this is all key stuff, and it relates back to the whole UFO file. That right as J. Allen Hynek dies, this memo comes out, and Jack Fillet publishes it, and it's a dud, because Bob Lazar takes over the whole sphere, and everyone's convinced, that Area 51 is the spot where they're hiding the UFOs. And boom, this shows that all that metal would have gone to this other program. Pinnacle Memorandum shows when this stuff becomes available, it goes to this other program with these guys in charge. And I've looked hard into a lot of these people. I think some of the names are altered and that they might actually be different. RJ Lund, but I've never been able to do a thorough, and I've never seen anyone who's, Black Vault or any of these guys do like a FOIA on these names and actually figure out, look up these dates, all files from these dates pertaining to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, do a FOIA on these names and figure out who these people were. and what's going on with that. And then, yeah, we'll talk about the FOIAs and the weather modification stuff too. I know I seen we're gonna do a video on that. I was gonna do that one today, but because that one's been a big in the news. I mean, Alex Jones and Marjorie Taylor Greene, a number of other people have talked about this. We can touch on that really quickly if you guys want to go on a tangent real quick, but yeah, I think that the UFO files in this Patel stuff, I want to talk about how that relates and how Dick Cheney's path could have come parallel to that, and how there might be reasons to suspect that he might have connections with the UFO file. We'll talk about one of the most top secret programs in the United States, which is, of course, the Continuity of Government program. We're going to talk about the DEFCON system and the DEFCON levels in the United States Armed Forces, and a much more classified and lesser known system called the Information Operations Conditions, InfoCon levels. And we're going to get into some of these super bunkers, which are called Presidential Emergency Operations Centers. These they have a bunch of these secret ones. There's one deep under the White House. Apparently, there's tunnels that lead from the White House. There's several different ways out of the White House. There was, since the Cold War in the 50s, they had this operations center in Virginia, like 40. It was just miles away underneath this secret tunnel would bring them there to this emergency presidential a PEOC, where they could set up a temporary command. And then they have Project Greek Island, it was called, or Project Casper. Interesting, it's called Project Casper. Where was Dick Cheney? Where did Dick Cheney go to high school? Where did Dick Cheney grow up? Casper, Wyoming. Could there be a connection? Quite possibly. Let's look into Project Casper. But the Greenbrier is a famous one. It's like where they can fly the president in the Casper. Project Casper. I'm gonna have to look up more on Project Casper. Project Greek Island. When did this start? Because this is the late 1950s. But when specifically did I gotta look up Project Casper? So I want to look that up. That's interesting if there's a connection there. Why? But maybe there isn't. But anyways, yeah, I a lot of the stuff's still classified, and including Dick Cheney's work on these programs. But there's an article by the Atlantic. If you look up the Armageddon Plan, you'll find this Atlantic article from James Mann. James Mann has done some excellent reporting. He actually, James Mann wrote the unauthorized biography on Dick Cheney. It's crazy. I'm trying to find, so here's James Mann, right? He's a Washington-based journal. He wrote the unauthorized biography on Dick Cheney, did an interview called The Unauthorized Biography on Dick Cheney. He asserts that Dick Cheney is in fact the most powerful man in the world. And he was saying that back in the late 90s, like 2000s. And it's interesting that, oh, I found some James Mann stuff. But look, when you search for James Mann on YouTube, the first thing you get is a non-spherical earther. Okay, that's the first thing that comes up, and they'll get you shadow banned if you even talk about that. Right? It's a trigger. Why is that the first thing that comes up? The guy hasn't done anything in like 16 years, 12 years ago, man. I'm trying to get James Mann. We got to resurrect this man. He's missing the whole podcast scene. He doesn't realize no young people read anymore. That we got to get him on some podcasts to watch, um, so people can watch his stuff. But yeah, James Mann has done some excellent reporting if you look up his stuff. But this Armageddon plan stuff that is really most remarkable if you dig into this article. Um, he's probably been paid off not to talk about this stuff. Who knows, man? Dick Cheney's a powerful dude, and who knows what kind of stuff that they've done. But on the other hand, you have these guys running the UFO disinfo program still, since 1987. I mean, these guys are still like getting tons of views, still dominating the scene with their shitty weaponized podcasts that really just doesn't dig into anything real and talk about anything except a bunch of bull crap. I like to dig into the science and expose these people. But yeah, if you go here, you go to that. This is what happened right after, and I think it was all an organized distraction to distract people from this Pinnacle memorandum and where these real programs were and went. Because I think probably after that they might have moved it out of Battelle into another container organization, or what I call it, quasi-governmental container organization, where it's has all the security clearances, a company just like Battelle, right? So Battelle is perfect because for this type of thing, because it's a non-profit private institute, so it doesn't have to pay taxes, and it's got this special, that made $6.2 billion last year in these government contracts. So, I don't think it's likely that Louis von Thayer, the current CEO of Battelle, is the head of the UFO file, or that he knows anything about it. It's probably unlikely. I don't think that he's taken over the position that Howard C. Cross once had. I think that Battelle was used for a lot of these things in the past, but they've probably had to move them out of that. But they're now into this more of a management role. What looks like running a patent holding operation for the National Patent Secrecy Act, right? So the National Patent Secrecy Act, would want to manage and look over all these national laboratories so that anyone working there that invented, anti-gravity or a free energy device, or discovered anything that could actually be used and weaponized by, any of these industries, that technology would never see the light of day and become instantly classified. Everyone there involved in it sworn to secrecy and basically the technology just clamped down on. And now you're part of a classified program, whether you like it or not, and you're instantly sent to ITAR training and a whole other series of real trainings that are designed to teach you about what happens to you if you will tell anyone about what you've now been read into, and that happens to people working on this stuff all the time if you get too close to something. If that's what we tell people, how they can break free of that and how they can get the information out, and don't sign the NDAs, and don't get involved, don't get pressured into this and become a whistleblower before that happens. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, they just it's a dream come true, for the money that they offer and the opportunities and stuff. But That's why we get so many people that are older people in the APEC conferences, because it's people who are all retired now, and they don't care about the money or the lifestyle, and they want, to share what they worked on for the legacy, because, they spent a lifetime on classified programs and could never talk about it. And finally they get permission when it gets declassified to talk about it. And they want to talk about it in a place with other intelligent people that actually can understand it and ask the right questions. So that's what I have tried to create with the APEC conference and our community here. So yeah, this is and it's also a sounding platform for other crazy ideas, like the idea that, what's it called? What's that mining with the lithium mining company, North Carolina? Did you guys hear about Piedmont Lithium? Yeah, it was Piedmont Lithium. They had just signed this contract 5 months ago, and they're wanting to go expand the contracts to mine all this lithium underneath Kings Mountain in North Carolina. So apparently in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, they got the largest lithium deposit in the U.S. I don't know if it's the world. I know they got a bunch in lithium. They got a bunch in Bolivia and a bunch in um, Afghanistan, which people say is the reason we went in there. But yeah, the lithium thing is interesting, because it's kind of like, oh, the landowners in Hurricane Katrina. We've heard this conspiracy before with Katrina, that the dams were blown out or given out so that it would flood all those low income areas, so that everyone would lose their homes. The landowners would come in and buy out the property super cheap, and then bring it back, and then. Yeah, no, this is a different, this is not a science focused stream tonight. So if you just want science, then this is not the stream for you. This is a stream that we can talk about the science of weather modification and stuff if anyone has any of that. I just wanted to wonder about that, because yeah, this is another thing that did come up with the science of weather modification with this Hurricane Helena, and there's been a bunch of these storms that have brewed right in this area in the Gulf of Mexico. So there's been a whole bunch of there's been another weird storm that brewed right out of this Gulf of Mexico. Some of these storms have come out of these warmer areas, but a few of them have been generated right in this area. And there's people that believe that we have some kind of weather weapon that's been built inside the Gulf of Mexico that can generate, that has the megawatt, has the power structure to actually generate killer storms on command. And then there's other people that have said, yeah, the Hawaii is the other one, where they said that there was like a laser weapon, and that they took out the volcano down in Hawaii and all that stuff. I don't know if you've heard that one, but yeah, so there's some interesting science if we think about that. But particularly, I thought that what was interesting is the someone said the blue roofs were immune to the laser, so all the houses that got burned didn't. All the houses with blue roofs didn't get burned because of the laser that they used or something. So that was an interesting one. I wanted to see some people actually, try and do some experiments on, because, I wanted to see some actual proof of that. But as far as a weather hurricane machine in the Gulf of Mexico that the government has, that they're using to, generate these storms to knock out, to kill us all, in order for the rich people to buy out, all the land so they can mine the lithium or build condos on beachfront property. I don't know. It's an interesting conundrum, and I don't claim to have all the answers or know all the answers, but people brought it up, and I figured, why not talk about that before we dive back into Dick Cheney, the continuity of government program, and how COG disaster think tanks And what they did, so where did FEMA come from? So FEMA must have come from this whole, emergency management structure, right? FEMA's a really interesting government agency. What's the history of FEMA? Huh? Sorry. April 1st, 1979. So on April Fool's Day, 1979, FEMA was created. What an interesting history, huh? President Carter gave the agency the dual mission of emergency management and civil defense. Stafford Act, the Stafford Disaster Relief and Emergency Assistance Act of 1974, kind of laid the foundational footwork for all this, apparently. And then, yeah, 9/11 really mobilized FEMA. And that's interesting because FEMA had some interesting drills and stuff on 9/11 that they were running, right? Weren't there? It's like was it the FEMA Tripod 2 drill? Yeah, Cop VCIA. This is a great site. I mean, it's old school, right? You could tell early internet, but Michael Rupert was a beast of a reporter on all this stuff. He talks all about FEMA, how this stuff came to be. What's interesting about FEMA, right? So FEMA is created in 1974, lays the groundwork, 1979. That's all the time that Dick Cheney's rising to power behind the scenes in the White House as well. So it's a real interesting time for Dick Cheney, and Dick Cheney's got his hands in a lot of interesting stuff, right? One of the things Dick Cheney has got his hands in during this whole time, and I got to close some of these windows so we can focus down, right? We come out to the classified files on Dick Cheney and stuff. We find out that, Dick Cheney worked for Halliburton. They want to drill oil. They want to go into Iraq. They want to have all these missions and plans that are aligned with a bunch of these other actors and people in Washington, including Paul Bremer, Paul Wolfowitz, Ariel Sharon, all the neocons, Billy Crystal, all the there's so many different forces that were all coming together sort of at this time. It's really an interesting conundrum. And then the whole Enron scandal and involvement with the Enron run that basically bankrolled the Bush and Cheney presidency to the White House. So they scammed this whole Enron WorldCom scandal and used the money to fund the run for the White House. So they stole the White House, and then they destroyed and derailed all the the stuff in the investigation that led back to them. And Ken Lay and all those other guys took the fall, which was wild. But what's more interesting is the whole Ford. Ford is an interesting president. A lot of people know the secret, history on Ford. Ford was compromised, and he was a big part of the Warren Commission. So the Warren Commission was the investigation of the JFK assassination. So Ford was basically promised, power in exchange for helping the CIA cover up the assassination, their involvement in the assassination of President Kennedy. So Ford is directly involved with the government, court investigation, compromisation of our courts and our police and the investigation process, which covered up the CIA's involvement in the President Kennedy. He's in the White House, and these guys get in as his staffers. Interesting characters, Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney. And Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld are immediately put into this top secret and read into this most top secret program, this continuity of government program, where they are put on these disaster scenario planning think tanks, which basically came up with the ideas. I don't know when this system first came out with the threat levels and the ideas for this whole thing. Okay, it was 60. So these are the I don't know what the actual history of this was, but Dick Cheney was bred into and part of this program where their job was to think up all these crazy scenarios of what could happen to the United States. And one of the things that's interesting is that the Infocon level was lowered right before 9/11. Just before 9/11. They lower. I got to look this up. Info condition level lowered just before 9/11. So Dick Cheney's working for these companies in the 80s. In the 90s, he becomes this president of Halliburton under these really mysterious conditions. If you watch the Vice documentary and look into James Mann's research on this, I'd love to get him on for an interview. But how Dick Cheney, so the Halliburton CEO. So if you look into how Dick Cheney rose to become the president of Halliburton, there's like, it's weird. It's like he took the other guy out and got into the position because he applied for it and just this really strategic way. I don't know all the details of it because I just I didn't have enough time to really dive through this beforehand. But if you look into, there's a whole very sketchy history of how he became the CEO at Halliburton Industries. And of course, Halliburton's stock went up huge with the Iraq War and the Bush administration's handling of their policy. It was like a dream come true when those planes hit the towers for Dick Cheney and Halliburton. They were like, oh God, yes, it's on. This is like a blessing. So they should have been suspects in the whole thing, especially given the fact that they spent 2 decades before that, working on these disaster scenario planning think tanks where their job was to think up, oh, hey, what if they hijack a plane? Oh, hey, what if they fly it into a building? Duh. So they had all this kind of stuff in place. And I thought that was, this is super interesting when you look into who Dick Cheney was working with. One of the companies, Dick Cheney was a board on the Foreign Policy Advisory Board for Solomon Smith Barney. And that was a bank that operated in New York. And they occupied 85% of the floors in World Trade Center Building 7 on 9/11. It was owned by this bank, and Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld both sat on their Foreign Policy Advisory Board and they left before joining the Bush administration, which is even more weird, interesting, connection that, comes up in the whole history of this, that ties, Dick Cheney even further to 9/11 than he's already been implicated, because Dick Cheney, of course, went to the presidential emergency operations center on 9/11, It actually turns out that Dick Cheney's Secret Service agent was the same Secret Service agent that was in charge of Trump's Secret Service during that assassination attempt, which is really weird because what's her name? What's the name of this lady who protected them both? Okay, so people can look her up. It's not here. They're gonna give you fake stuff. They're gonna tell you that they're gonna bring her out, and then they're gonna not give you your name and not tell you who she is, and they're gonna fake you out. This is how they bury stories. They used to do this all the time with the vaccines and autism. They were gonna do an in-depth report and tell you everything, and they would never like do it. It would always just hype people up and then let them down over and over again to burn them out on the real info. So they hide. Trump assassination. So this is a key thing. You can tell because it's been buried by the Google algorithms, and you can't find her name. Anybody know this woman's name? Kimberly Cheadle. That's her name, right here. So she was forced to resign as head of the Secret Service after that assassination attempt almost killed President Trump. They didn't have the right snipers on the roof. Then Trump went back to that same rally. It was huge, record turnouts, man. It was just like, that was insane. But Kimberly Cheadle, turns out that she's in charge of Trump's assassination, Trump's Secret Service squad that hired all those, female, really looked like very inexperienced Secret Service agents to be on his main detail. And also allowed, didn't have snipers on these roofs and allowed this guy to get in position under very, there's a lot of interesting. This guy was allowed and basically told, hey, you can go do this time. And you could see him. He was walking around like nervous beforehand. Then he went back into position and took the shots and everything. So this was allowed. This was like set up. Allowed to happen if not the most sloppiest work ever done by a Secret Service security detail ever, if this wasn't allowed to happen with the assassination on Trump, that and she's fired from him. He's got a new security detail, much better. This woman, I do not trust her worth anything, especially since she should be subpoenaed and made to testify about what Dick Cheney was doing on 9/11 and what she observed as she was there watching him and in that emergency bunker on 9/11 when Transportation Secretary Norman Minetta's testimony to the 9/11 Commission said that Dick Cheney had some kind of order in place to NORAD. And they kept saying, the plane's getting close, President. Does the order still stand? There's a plane coming, it's getting 30 miles out. Does the order still stand? No, of course the order still stands. Have you heard anything to the contrary? Is what, he testifies that Dick Cheney said at the 9/11 Commission. So Dick Cheney had an order in place, which was a stand down order. He tries to say it was a shoot down order. They would have shot that plane out of the sky in seconds if he had issued a shoot down order. Kidding me? That's what I think happened to Flight 93 in 9/11. But yeah, Dick Cheney benefited from 9/11. He's a prime suspect for 9/11. But as far as his connection to the UFO file, I don't know. I wish David Grusch or someone could elaborate more on the deeper connection, because I know how the continuity of government program connects to this legacy programs from the Cold War and all that stuff, but this was more of this was a whole different side of that. This is like the presidential operations side, and what happens if the president gets taken out? The vice president has to assume the presidency, like what happened with Johnson after Kennedy got his head blown off by the CIA in Dallas, Texas. And then they have these operations. What if the vice president gets taken out? Well, then it's the Secretary of Defense who gets to be president. So they have a whole first, second, third, fourth, fifth, pecking order of command. And if all those guys get taken out, it's cog, and then they'll just appoint somebody in charge, and it's basically this whole system that includes Northcom, right? All the prime, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the military departments, the heads of the military, basically will assume command of the country if they take out everybody and shit gets that bad. It's called these contingencies. Yeah, the contingency plans. So, in any case, these contingency plans, I'm not sure, are related to crash retrieval and those kind of operations, if they would be. So those type of operations would have been handled by the U.S. Air Force up until Space Force was created, and now I think they'd be under Space Force jurisdiction. I don't know, Jared, what do you know more about the military than I do. Where do you suppose they might be hiding something like that, a crash retrieval program? So if we have a current crash retrieval program, where is that?
Yeah, I think Space Force is more focused on satellites. And so that includes all of the tracking of the UFOs. So they're working with the recovery program. Good zoom tight. They're working with the recovery program to be able to track these things. And from what I've heard, it's a game of cat and mouse. And so the flight characteristics of the UFOs will change over time. So the government will get to the point where it can track them, and then they'll change, and then they have to come up with new tech to track them again. And it's just this back and forth, back and forth. So I think that's what Grusch was really seeing. Was he was seeing all of this on the geospatial stuff, right? The GSA and NRO and
Geospatial Intelligence Agency,
yeah,
and how they're connected to all that, right?
yeah, yeah. So Space Force, I don't know that Space Force is necessarily like at the core of the onion, so to speak, but they're definitely deeper than some of the farther outside the core type of stuff. It sounds right now like pretty much all of the reverse engineering efforts have been outsourced. I mean, I can't say that with any authority, but that's what it sounds like.
Right. It seems like completely stovepiped offshoots that are, what we call cutouts in intelligence speak, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, supposedly there was someone who I thought this came out not too long ago, or not too long after Grusch's testimony, but I thought there was someone that was working with them, and it came out like the U.S. is in possession of something like more than 112 different recovered craft. Someone else was saying recently that the National Underwater Reconnaissance Office has actually done the majority of the recovery, because 2/3 of the ocean or the world is ocean. So, and we see that they actually operate in water more than they operate over land. So it would make sense that the Navy actually still owns a lot of the recovery process. And actually, if we go back into the history of it, from what I remember, I thought it was the Air Force had to basically hand off ownership of this stuff over to the Navy in like the 60s or the 70s or something like that. So by the time you get into the 80s, like it's all Navy owned. Like the Air Force is out of the UFO game for
Most
the
of the
most
world's
part.
oceans, so yeah, I would agree. Maybe it was under the Navy. What's interesting about that is, I think it was the Naval Intelligence offices that were mostly in the Pentagon offices that were the section that was hit on 9/11. So one of the theories that I heard is that they were destroying like they had moved all the old files into that like area specifically to destroy them on 9/11, is, because they had all this stuff in the Pentagon. You can't shred it, you can't like access it, and then how do you get rid of it and make it all disappear and go bye-bye? You need like an event, and like they needed something. So like this whole thing served multiple purposes. And so that's where I personally believe that Dick Cheney was just a low-level kind of he was a point guy, but his involvement with 9/11 proved to the deep state that he was worthy of Overlord, the title, and that's where I think he was read into all the programs and really got into it. I think 2001 is when Dick Cheney like really learned about all this stuff and got into it.
It's interesting you mentioned that. So someone that I'm really interested in was a guy that he's the guy who Dan Bursch. This is a guy who was a whistleblower back around 2005 or something under the Project Camelot. His whole shtick is that he claims he worked out at S4 for like 20 years.
Right.
I have a playlist of like all of his videos. He's actually got like 20 plus hours of interviews out there where he goes into great detail. It's good stuff. Anyways, so what he says is that for MJ12, that there was like this big passing of the baton or something that happened around 2002, which was basically when his main like handler MJ guy was telling him, okay, hey, I have a new order for you. You need to go out there and you need to tell everybody, all this. You have my full permission, full disclosure. Just go out and tell them everything, which is like unheard of. Like this, it's so counter to everything else in this field. But that's how the story goes. And then supposedly he was also like MJ9 for like a day.
Yeah, I have my buddy Dan Benkert. He knows. He used to talk to Dan Burrish on the phone all the time, and knew him real well. You should talk to Danny about Dan sometime. I don't know if Dan Burrish is still around, but
he's still alive. Someone just interviewed him within the last couple of months. I forget which ufologist it was, but it's like one of the guys on the sidelines that like when he does it big. Yeah, Bursch is real cagey. Like he does not want any attention now. He is super underground.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
But that time frame, that 2002 time frame. Also, at that time, there was another big thing that happened. Was when we transitioned from the ballistic missile defense, right? So the Star Wars program, space lasers, which my stuff, I'm all over the fact that we actually made space lasers and said we didn't. And that was, in part associated to some of this reverse engineering stuff.
So not just the Project Excalibur stuff, but like,
yeah, so Project that was part of.
That was like super unrealistic because they were just going to put big nukes up in the space and like blow the nukes off and use the nuke energy inside of they would blow off the nuke inside this cavity that was made out of hafnium, and the hafnium is a gamma ray reflector, and it will create a gamma ray laser, and then they can focus that laser out and blast these nukes out of the sky with the high energy gamma rays that would be produced by this explosion. And
eventually they transitioned. They went from that sea urchin version of it, the Excalibur 1 and 2, but by the time they got to Excalibur 3, they had finally figured out, you know what? It's a lot better to use free electron lasers, like gas type lasers. It's a lot better to use those and amplify those than it is to deal with all of the headaches required for doing the nuclear explosion ones. And what's really cool about the free electron laser stuff is that, one, you're dealing in terahertz, and we all know how awesome that range can be for a whole bunch of cool stuff. But the other thing is that the free electron lasers, like that's how you get fusion going. And there's some good stuff out there that suggests that all the craft are utilizing fusion in one form or another. So this idea of the the reverse engineering efforts really just being a way of getting the money and the research pointed towards being able to understand what it takes to make fusion, which eventually the stronger lasers allowed us to do. Then that was all under the auspice of the ballistic missile defense, BMD. Star Wars turned into BMD.
Well, there's also the terahertz laser stuff with cold fusion too. Apparently with the, Stan Spock, U.S. Space War, Navy Space War Labs confirmed this with the terahertz lasers and cold fusion experiments as well. So,
but in 2002, it all switched over from BMD to BMDO, and that was like the dominoes falling of or the shell game of moving these projects from one thing to another thing to another thing. So if I had to take a stab at guessing, obviously we're all guessing, but at guessing how this shell moved around, there was a collaborative effort in the 80s between capitalist enterprise, right? Lockheed and Raytheon and McDonald. There was, a collaboration between them and the DoD. And then come post 2002, they started shifting more and more of these things over into their hands, even though they already had a bunch of their own. It's like the government started offloading more and more off their hands into the free market.
The free electron lasers. So you think that they built one of these that's space capable?
Once again, I'm going to caveat everything I say, but from what stuff I've seen and read, it looks like fusion was actually cracked in late 88. And then by mid 1989, so fusion, the whole game of fusion is you have to just get more energy out than you put in, right? So they cracked it, they got a little bit more, but you need at least 50x. You need a minimum of 50x more out than in just to break even, right?
Right.
So once you get past that, now you're starting to deal with energy levels that you can actually shape these wave fronts, kind of like what ZC Institute is trying to do. You can start shaping these wave fronts, and you can end up making actual metric engineered capable craft. So if the Belgium wave, which looks to me like a military operation, if indeed that's a military operation, that's the smoking gun that, yeah, they did crack it, and they were showing it off as soon as they did.
Right. Well, that's what Ashton Forbes was on Candace Owens today, telling her about what happened. He thinks that that's what happened to MH370. So I don't know if we're going to talk about this more on Friday. I'm trying to get Ashton to come on, or some free energy folks and friends, to talk about the technology and the possibilities, what this could be. He had 22,000 people watching this live 5 hours ago, and it's already got almost 200,000 views. So this is going absolute bonkers viral right now. If you guys haven't seen that yet. I was in the live chat and also commenting on this. I doubt I'm going to get seen much or heard. I just want to bring up a couple things that I wanted to talk about. One of them is Pentagon talking plasma balls. You guys haven't seen this already. Maybe I should share the sound. A second. There we go.
You can make laser plasma balls talk.
Stop, or we will be forced to fire upon you.
It's called the laser-induced plasma effect, and it's made by the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate. So what they've done is basically created a laser that can shoot out to a certain distance, and they can pipe in sound waves through it, and actually make human voice sounds and commands.
Stop, or we will be forced to fire
Now, where this becomes useful is around an area where you want to keep a perimeter secure. So essentially, you can shoot out this laser. You can then talk to the people on the edge of the perimeter rather than sending troops out there and tell them to get away, or you're going to shoot, or get away, or they're going to use other means to deter them. And that same laser can be used to actually target the individual and create heat through pinpricks, like microscopic pinpricks in their skin, even beneath clothing. It's extremely uncomfortable and people move out of the way almost immediately. At the same time, the exact same laser is also being used as kind of a never-ending flashbang grenade. It can basically, with a power source, it can constantly create audible effects to deter and confuse and disorient people, just like a flashbang grenade that you would have in your kit, but would only be able to flash once, maybe twice, depending on the design. Now, it's still a few years away. They just finished testing to get the audio portion through the laser in a laboratory setting this year, but they expect to have a fieldable version within the next 5 years that troops could use to protect different areas or put on mobile platforms to disperse crowds or use in a non-lethal way in theater.
Oh crap, that disappeared. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that disappeared, man. People, you start telling people how to stop people's hearts with technology. It's that's not what I want to get into or talk about on this channel. Even
It
though,
reminds me of the voice of God. Did you ever see the voice of God technology?
yeah, so voice of God technology is another one. It's called the microwave auditory effect. And that's where they can make voices in your head, you know, with the microwave auditory effect. And the guy does it. He actually makes one of these. You can link it through your guitar amplifier and put the sound through there, and then instead of the speaker output, put it on one of these microwave emitters. Yeah, you could totally do it. Modulate the microwave sounds and stuff. And this is the LRAD systems too, that will have the burning sensation on your skin. That's like the crowd control weapons and stuff. Yeah, all this stuff was developed by DARPA and is real, is factual technology. But what's another thing that's interesting is there was this video laser display Japan. There's a company in Japan. Oh, man, I've covered this bunch of times. It's like old as hell. It was like 2011. They displayed this at this technology tour. Yeah, this is it.
全くスクリーンのいらないこの大気中に
Aerial
手
Burton.
を描画できる。
It's called.
非常にいいんじゃないかという発想で。
Yeah,
じゃあ
so
空に
they
つま
can
り大
create
気中
these
にどうやって
visual
文字を書こうかと思
displays
ったときにその
in the air.
プラズマ発光っていう現象を使う。
They can make butterflies. See, they make this butterfly and they make the butterfly fly through the air. You know, each second they pulse a bunch of these pulses and they can create a whole bunch of these little dots in the air that move around really fast.
違いであると
And
いうふうに思ってます。
The images are constructed by firing a 1 kilohertz in.
This talks about how they do it. They ionize these molecules of air light in the air. Yeah, so it's laser Burton, aerial Burton 3D display. I thought that was neat. But one of the things that's cool is if you combine that technology with some other technologies. So I've been saying for years that this mirage effect, which researchers created at here, I think it's from the Institute of Physics. You can get the paper here, but yeah. So this is an idea where you have this angle of incidence, and inside the water, a certain angle, you'll get total internal reflection, which is what you're seeing reflected here on the surface of the water. Here on the inside of the surface, all that light is being totally internally reflected, so you see a perfect mirror on the top of the water of what's beneath it. Not perfect because the water's rippled a little bit, so it's a little distorted. When they run this current through these series of carbon nanotubes, these wired carbon nanotubes conduct that electricity, and they instantly heat up like a heater coil. They heat up super, super hot, and that temperature gradient in the liquid here, I think it's water, changes the refractive index, so you get a complete reflection, and this mirage effect actually reflecting the wall in back of it, causing the object to disappear with this mirage effect. So if you can get that incidence angle right, and you can heat up enough of air molecules in a pattern on both sides of your objects, it might be possible to do active plasma invisibility cloaking. Potentially. Think about active plasma invisibility cloaking. So you showed that's a real technology that you can use this mirage effect to hide objects. We can create plasma balls using lasers, and we can create, if you could do both of these things, then could it be possible that you could, shine a bunch of these laser balls, you get them oriented so that you can do this by lining them up to the plane so they're spinning around, and then boom, you can create this plasma shield which makes the plane, looking like it turned invisible to the viewer. So that technology is possible. I know I'm not saying that that's what happened and that's what we see on the videos, whether they're CGI or they're real or not. I'm not an expert, don't care to comment, don't care to get into or pick sides in all this. Just trying to talk about technology, just trying to offer, my personal expertise and explanation on this, because these are technologies that exist and that we've proven are real and could explain what we see with this plane disappearing and these plasma balls flying around it, that they could have made it look like it just vanished and then flew it to Diego Garcia under this plasma shield, active plasma cloaking shield. Not saying that's what happened, but it's seemingly plausible with the technology. It's certainly more plausible than teleportation physics, right? Because how do you build a teleporter, transporter, and there's a number of conundrums that we get into, as far as this. So Ashton's over here on Candace Owens today.
That we have that kind of technology, you have to believe that the government knows what really happened to this plane. There's just too much evidence for that. And you have
he's saying there's too much evidence. We have to believe that this technology out there to teleport planes. Couldn't be anything else, but we have the technology to teleport planes. I think that's quite a claim, when he's saying, and then he's also at the end, he says, it's free energy. I've determined it's free energy technology. I believe that we have free energy, and he's really new to this stuff. I've been researching this stuff, trying to bring disclosure and trying to prove and vet this technology for over a decade, two decades pretty much is how long I've been involved. I mean, doing that free energy stuff, maybe a little bit, less than that. But as far as, getting scientists and physicists on who are subject matter experts to really vet this stuff, I'm not trying to convince Candace Owens' audience that free energy is real. Okay. That's not who we need to convince. I'm trying to convince Brian Keaton's audience, it's Sabina Hossenfelder's audience that free energy is real. A Veritasium's audience. Those are the people we need to convince. I mean, this is like shooting fish in a barrel if you're arguing physics with people who watch Candace Owens' podcast. Not to say that there's no physicists who watch Candace Owens, but it's probably a lot fewer and far between. It's not really the community that we need to be convincing and bringing up on this. So this is I don't know. I got some interesting. I'd like to get Ashton on to talk more about the free energy stuff, but I mean, you go over to Ashton's his channel, and lately he's been talking about he's been doing Technology Wednesdays, and then the Free Energy Fridays. You know, Secret Science Wednesday, and then Free Energy Friday. And on the last one, he brought up Ken Wheeler and all this, you know, debunked crap that there's like way, like these guys were like, we went through this and stopped listening to these people a long time ago, I thought. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know if maybe Jeremiah could come on here and correct me with what is correct about this and where I'm wrong. But yeah, this is where we're at. Ashton saying, you know, pretending to be like a physics expert who's super knowledgeable and coming off like that to these people who don't know and are new to the physics and new to the science and stuff. And at the same time looking like a complete asshole to the real physicists out there who see this stuff and are like, oh my God, this guy's pushing, you know, free energy. Is he gonna, you know, be pushing a magnetic motor on Candace Owens, you know, too? I don't know. I have respect for Ashton. I think he did a great job, man. I think like he did a good job of bringing up a lot of real technologies and talking about some stuff. You know, he's new to this stuff, so he doesn't have all the pieces, and he's at least getting into it. But he does have a good understanding of like the Dirac C, a lot of these quantum physics concepts that he's brought up and was able to articulate quite well on this channel. I was really impressed with, you know, some of this, you know. But again, this is, I think it seems like craziness and insanity, but this is where we're at. 20,000 people watched this. 200,000 people watched it already since in the last 5 hours. And, you know, she's been known to get 1 to 2 million views on a podcast. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, you know, with this. And he's also doing, he's talking about
the reason why they're not is because they don't want to go to prison. They don't want to face the death penalty. They don't want to be sued into oblivion. That is what happens in disclosure. Disclosure comes out, and we find out that we.
This is why I'm not getting it. That's why everyone's over watching Ashton right now. 460 people watching him live. That's why we're failing over here, man. Everyone's going to watch Ashton. So I don't know what to do, man. Trying to like educate Ashton and say, you know, I think you're getting scammed by these free energy people. I thought he was legit when he's saying, you know, like I'm working with Sal Pays and Dave Rossi and stuff. And then all of a sudden he's coming out and with this Ken Wheeler crap. And I'm like, dude, like if you're just getting into this, then, you know, and then he started this big, you know, like not a big fight, but he started a little bit of a fight. He didn't, you know, what I give respect for, he hasn't blocked me. He's a lot of other people he's blocked because they, you know, and I don't get in with the CGI videos or any of that stuff, but Ashton hasn't blocked me yet. In fact, I'm a moderator on his channel still. I believe I'm still a moderator. I don't think he's taken away my moderator status over.
I believe you are.
Yeah, we had a little spat like on Twitter these last 2 days because we're arguing over the free energy stuff, you know. So I'm just saying, you know, you got to prove this stuff and prove that you're not getting scammed by scammers and you're not scamming all of Candace Owens' audience with a free energy scam or any, you know. And I think he's done a good job of pointing people in the direction of science and stuff. Because tons of people were talking about my channel in the live chat on that show, you know, and I'm sure that if everyone in this chat who watches this channel is going to go over to Candace Owens' channel and make sure they leave a nice comment on that video telling her, you know, look for Candace Owens' comment and reply to Candace and tell her, you got to get AlienScientist on next. This is amazing. You're covering this content. Please, just everyone, if you could do that for me right now. Because Ashton has got the foot in the door. He was able to open up. You know, I haven't been able to do this. I give Ashton props because I have not been able to break through to the mainstream with this message and this technology or any of this information. And even if the videos are fake and all this stuff turns out to be false and a false investigation, it at least brings this conversation to the table, brings the technologies out there where people are like, warp drive? Lockheed Martin might have warp drive? What? Yes, hell yes, we want to get in on this conversation, right? This
Absolutely.
is where we're going to lead all these people to APEC and the scientists and the technologies, and where they can find the mother lode of people like me who've been researching this thing. And I maybe disagree with Ashton about free energy and these technologies. And I think, hey, I know more physics than you, Ashton. You've been you just got into this like a year ago, and I think Ashton, he wants to be right, and he's got his stubborn, ego and that. But at the same time, he's seen when I come in on discussions when he's talking about the science and the sources that I provide and what I'm able to bring to the conversation. He's like, okay, maybe this guy does know more about this stuff than me. So hey, let's give it to Ashton and also Candace Owens for being the first top 10 podcaster to really talk about warp drive and these technologies. So if anyone can go over to that this Candace Owens podcast that was just posted today, and just go leave a comment on there. Find Candace and make sure you let her know AlienScientist is the mother lode for this information, and that's where we need to go next with it. So hopefully we can get her to talk more about secret science. She doesn't talk a lot about science on her show and stuff, and she's been quite I think overly rejecting of all of science, and I think it would be a really good conversation, a really good opportunity to bring her audience into a lot of this stuff, and also educate her and a lot of the other mainstream people into what really goes on with some of these programs and technologies. But it's the Sarfati episode was great. Have people seen the clips from that yet?
Show the clip.
That was so amazing.
Can I show the clip? Should I show the clip?
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, I gotta find it. It's on Twitter, right? It's on. I gotta find the guy who shared it too. Who
Predgozin or something? Predgozin, like it was
he's
like
some
a pun
Russian
on
dude.
Predgozin.
And he's like, please don't block me, Jack. I just had to, do this because it was great. And plus that video is getting chopped up and posted all over Reddit. I don't know if you've seen and heard that. It's going like viral. Oh, here it is. All right, hold up. I'm about to bring it up right now. Okay.
You should also go through the paper that Sarfati is like ranting about.
We don't know who's really behind Ashton. It could be, it could be a disinformation, deliberate thing. I don't know.
Or you could be a deliberate thing. We don't know either. So we're gonna figure it out.
All right,
Jack.
who knows?
You do have a history with the CIA from the 1950s, Jack.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I do. I said that I don't remember calling Sal Paez a certified lunatic. But now I will say Sal Paez is a certified lunatic, and his friend Rossi doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. This is the dumbest thing I've heard. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit, okay? And let me just say this, that Sal Paez does have a PhD. I looked him up. He's an engineer. His PhD was in some kind of like aerospace with low gravity. It's all Newtonian gravity. It has nothing to do with general relativity. Sal does not. I was involved with MKO. Boy, in Hiroshima. Yeah, how much?
A lot, and the Schwinger limit's very high. I understand.
No, it has nothing to do with the fucking Schwinger limit.
Okay.
There's no connection. You don't understand what the fuck you're talking about. You don't know elementary physics. I'm sorry, Michael. You don't know. Where did you study physics? What did you study? Did you study what the Schwinger limit has to do with intense? What does that have to do with what I just said? Nothing.
So, if you have these phonons.
Well, listen, wait a minute. You don't even understand E equals MC squared.
Moss-Bauer coupling. That's where
you're not listening. You don't hear what I'm talking about. Just listen. You're making Moss-Bauer coupling. What the fuck? ordered that? Irrelevant.
Not
I'm
not
talking about a simple equation. E equals mc squared.
mass
okay?
energy. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The mass equivalent of energy. That's general. That's special relativity. 1905, Einstein. Right? Everybody knows that equation, but you apparently don't understand it. Neither do a lot of people.
Well,
Because
you don't have to.
Just listen. You're not listening.
Okay.
Oh God.
It's just so good.
You have to love it, man. Jack's funny. It's some of the funniest. He
The
brings
4K.
he brings a lot to the table. So yeah, I was trying to look up the it was Pavo Pilkin or something, right? Was that the dude he's always talking about?
I thought you were going to show the clip of him talking about having seen 4K gray aliens. But yeah, there was some paper that he was telling Bernie that, you know, you have to read this paper. I'm like, a couple folks tried looking for the paper and couldn't find it.
All right. Perfect. Here's the paper.
The paper exists.
Here is the paper. Let me share it in the chat. You can check that out. Ba boom, bada boom. Okay. So it is by this guy, Pavel Pilkinen, which you'll never be able to remember or spell because you'll never know if it's 2 A's or 2 V's. I just cannot ever get this right. But in any case, yeah, you'll never spell the guy's name, so you can't find the paper, right? But this is the paper. I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah, he's talking about these topologically sound plasma states, you know, like where you have just like EVOs. EVOs could be examples of all this stuff, where you're making like condensates. These
It looks like
I know
it's
he talked
talking
about the
about
Froelich
consciousness.
condensates. Actually, maybe I'm completely wrong. This is where I gotta get Jack on so he can call me a dumbass, and I can be like, well, yeah, that's right. We are dumbasses, and we're here to learn. We're here to try to figure out this stuff. And
we are all dumbasses compared to Jack. That's a fact. We're all schmucks.
But you know, you only get to be old and wise without first being young and stupid. So let's try to educate the young and stupid so that, you know, we don't make the same mistakes and keep following the wrong rabbit holes. And you know, I want to know, man, I want to follow Jack. I want to follow Sal Pays. I want to follow Charles Bueller. I want to follow all these people, but I want to make sure I'm not getting, you know, playing disinfo ping pong with the CIA and the Navy. I also want to make sure that, you know,
right, like literally, that's what it is. It's a back and forth between two factions of the government.
It's crazy, right? It is. It's almost like, you know, it's almost like that, man. But yeah, this is great. I thought that was awesome. Yeah, this is the paper. I'm glad you guys couldn't find. I'm not glad you guys couldn't find it, but I'm glad you guys brought it up so that I could help you find it, because it's took me a while too for all this stuff. I you know what? I'm gonna post all the papers that he mentions in the description on that video right now so that people can find them. But yeah, any other ideas? I want to hear from the live chat. I'm going to read some comments and stuff from the live chat here. Does anybody have any better ideas? Does Jack run the UFO program? No. He wouldn't be that out in the open. I'm just going to put papers mentioned by Jack. So who you think runs the UFO program? Mention it in the live chat here on the right. Let me hear what you guys think. Who's in charge? Who's really running the show? Is it the people I mentioned? Do you like my whole overview and synopsis on it? Am I off base? Why am I off base? Where should I look? That's a better source. by Jack Sarfati. And yeah, that would be good. What I gotta think if there's any other papers that I should. I'm gonna write. I'll write a message to him after this and just be like, "Hey, Jack, if there's any papers that we could put together, I want links to them." He says, "Oh, I post all this stuff on Twitter, all the time." But so I guess they bury his better stuff, and what gets to the top of Reddit is, of course, his claim that he's seen a 4K video of a gray alien. Oh God, dude, he's he's a beast on Reddit, dude. I want to see like Reddit Jack Sarfati 4K gray alien. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So this is 2 days ago. Physicist Bean Tiger on UFOs. So this is great. They aren't entertaining. I'm not trying to be entertaining, dork. Oh, this is great. Yeah, yeah. That's for you, Bernie, with your stupid jokes, man. They were saying people talking shit about Bernie, people talking, oh, this is great.
Right? It's like you gotta be able to have a thick skin if you're gonna be on the internet, because no one's gonna like everyone. It's just the way it is.
Well, people out need to understand, right? So when we do like videos, right, that there's a lot of these people, complex subjects explained at 5 different levels, right? So there's a lot of these the 5 levels video series by Wired. Have you ever seen this? The 5 levels video series, where they take these really complex subjects and they first explain it to a child, then they explain it to a teen, then a college student, then a grad student, and then finally they at level 5 is like the real experts, level shit, right? So that's what I try to do. Is we get Jack Sarfati on, who's level 5. I'm more like a level 3, 4. And then we got to get level 1 and 2, So Bernie's got that covered. No offense.
Right? Exactly. Got the full spectrum. I'm definitely on the spectrum.
All right. You got to have one guy asking those level questions because there's someone in the audience that's there who's, right
The
there.
majority of the audience.
But then, I don't know if it gets, he gets confused because then he's like, Michael's like level 4. I'm like level 3, and, he's like telling Michael he doesn't know anything about physics. And I'm like, whoa, buddy, like, so Michael's countering with some real good physics questions to really, put him back on his toes and say, hey, maybe we know more about this stuff than you might think. But yeah, it's always a fun time with Doc Brown there. I want to see. Well, let me see the comments here, man. The Pope. So the Pope. Maybe the Pope is the one who's in the. There's a gray Pope. He's in charge of running the UFO file. Yes, the MH370 Philadelphia experiment 2.0. That's a good one. You should have brought up the USS Eldridge on that Candace Owens podcast and talked about, the teleporting ship. That would have been another one, huh? That's right in line with the U.S. Navy's disinformation on the whole electronic warfare and ECCM's research program that they've been involved in since time immemorable. Yeah, we can make things disappear and teleport, right? That's exactly what we want China to think. Who knows, man? It's wild ride, but all I know is that I want to see proof of these technologies first. Teleportation, teleportation, and information theorem, information theory, right? So information theory has some things to say about quantum teleportation, you know, and whether it's actually transporting, you know, the actual physical object from one point to another. Is that real? Is that what really happens? And yeah, it's a lot of these bracket notation operators, which it's some group theory operators in the math and some physics, some math that you need to learn to be able to crunch these things. And then of course, you know, the matrices that represent these things multiply like matrices, fall to eigenstates. But yeah, this is Ashton. I don't even like pretend I to understand this stuff fully or get in, you know, dive deep into it. That's why I rely on subject matter experts who do understand this stuff to come on and explain it for the people that really want to, that have that level and want to get into it and want to actually build and prove out, you know, teleportation. Because, and then, you know, Ashton's excuses, you know, hey, I don't have $1 billion like Lockheed Martin to go and build this stuff, otherwise I would. And yeah, I get that. But, you know, at the same time, I'm in the same boat as you, man. We're trying to like disclose and declassify and prove this stuff to the skeptics and everything. And before I go and make like grandiose and bold claims on a podcast that's going to be watched by 2 million people, I want to make sure I have proof that, you know, this plane, we have the technology to teleport a golf ball or a pin or, you know, that we have the technology to teleport this little toy UFO in my hand here before I can, you know, say that and claim that we have the technology to teleport an airplane and tell everybody on the podcast this, that we have the technology to teleport a plane. I want to see. Okay. No, the low blow. He's definitely not a child or the teenage level, man. Yeah, it was definitely a bit of a low blow for Bernie. But that's what I was trying to say with the 5 levels. You know, there's 5 levels of understanding, and the fact is that that 5 levels could really be, the expert level could be broken down another 5 times, right? If you really think about it, you know, like we could break that scale down to a little bit more precise. So, you know, there's really a bunch of different levels, and you know, this channel is definitely not made for kids and teenagers, and neither is, I don't think there's any kids or teenagers in Bernie's demographic of people that watch him either. So it's definitely
Right, and it's like I'm new to a lot of the things you cover, so I am lower on it on some of it, right?
and trust me, Bernie was not offended by my comment. So, and we're still friends. So
Absolutely.
they're trying to tear us apart, man. I don't claim to be at the top of like these fields either. I know, but what I do is I do what the experts do. So this company's like MTSI, right? And this MTSI, yeah, Modern Technology Solutions Incorporated is the name of the company. And you know, they don't claim to know all the answers or know all this stuff, but what they do is they keep a database of subject matter experts, right? Which is like what I do. A subject matter experts, someone who, it's like doctors can't all be, you can't just know everything. You can't do it all. It's not possible. So that's why you have a urologist, and that's why you have a podiatrist, and that's why you have an ophthalmologist and a bone doctor. I'm trying to think, oncologist. Yeah. So you have you have all these different fields so that people can actually, really get in and learn it and focus and become an expert on something. The same thing with physics, man. You got condensed matter. You got Brandenburg for plasma physics. We got Dave Chester for all the the deep math stuff. We have we have a guy for each thing. I got Jeremiah for electrical engineering and figuring out complex electrical systems and stuff like that. We have a team of people that we put together which help us. So I don't know everything. It's the same way that Neil deGrasse Tyson works at the Hayden Planetarium with the, where he can claim that he's not an expert on COVID, but he knows more about it than you because he's friends with these subject matter experts who very definitely don't work for, disinformation of the CIA or big pharma or any of these special interest groups that could be, feeding you misinformation, and definitely, nothing like that. So yeah, there's reasons to be concerned about people like myself and Neil Tyson that you outsource a lot of our knowledge to other subject matter experts. How do you know your SME isn't CIA? How do you know that the person you're relying on for your information is legitimate and is not misled themselves or feeding you misinformation? That's a difficult task, and that's a serious question for a lot of people and a lot of the information that we get on a daily basis, right? So yeah, I say let's wrap up all this was a cool podcast. I'm glad we got into some current events and stuff, and I hope everyone goes over to that Candace Owens thing and suggests her to get check out the AlienScientist and APEC, because it would be great if we could get some attention on real technologies research and stuff. And also I'd like to educate a lot of these people on the real science, and maybe we're wrong. Maybe Ashton did figure it out with Sal Pays and Mike and Dave Rossi. So help us figure it out and show us how to teleport things and create free energy, because I don't think UFOs use free energy, and we can do the math on it and do the calculations, but I think they use cold fusion, man. I think they're using some kind of crystallic metallic fusion, some type of EVOs and this advanced physics that it was seen in the laboratory. They couldn't quite figure it out, and it's taken us a long time. It will take us a while to get here and to break through, because we really aren't getting the funding. The funding's going towards theories that they know will lead nowhere and not work. Meanwhile, they fund this stuff in sort of in private and keep it secret and out of the public domain. Yeah, so it's real important that we get like the real physics and the real science out on this. And I think it's only a matter of time. I think that this is a small step and a breakthrough in the right direction. I want to congratulate Ashton Forbes, for he's never blocked me, man, and I think that's awesome, because I've never gone off on him or called him a total fraud and everything. I think he's just I don't think he's a Fed. I've talked to the guy. I've seen from when he started. I was one of the first people that interviewed him when this thing first came out and he first started doing this, and I've been talking to him since then. I think he's just got misled by some of these. He's just new to this stuff, and you're gonna fall down some of these trips. You're gonna trip and fall. You're gonna cut your teeth when you're new like this, and you're gonna make some bad judgment calls on certain things. So I think he's just confused about that. He knows he's getting a lot of attention with this, talking about this stuff, and he wants it to be real. And I know I'm kind of like a Debbie Downer at the free energy party, asking for proof and actual experiments and whatnot. But at the end of the day, experience is the best teacher. if I'm wrong, if he's wrong, we're both going to come away with a learning lesson from this, and it's going to be experience for both of us. So time will tell. We'll see what comes out. Of this. If it's real free energy, then glory, hallelujah. Let's shut the energy companies down. Let's shut Dick Cheney and Halliburton down, and let's free humanity and make energy free again. Hallelujah. God save the queen. CPT symmetry is broken. We can throw out the laws of physics and rebuild physics on the new physics, whatever that may be. But if you got new physics, make sure we got like real legit, experimental, stuff for it. Because I'm not trying to convince, again, the 2 million people that are watching Candace Owens podcasts. I'm interested in watching the 2,000 people or so that work in laboratories at these top universities that can actually do something about this technology and all this. So again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being involved. And I think that I'm gonna go jump over to Ashton and see what he's talking about here, and make sure you leave that comment on the Candace Owens thing, and we'll see what we can do about making energy free again and helping with the whole disclosure process. Whether Ashton has something or not, we need to help this push humanity in the right direction, because free energy is the right idea. Whether that's from mass energy conversion with fusion, like I think it is, like I think they use a cold fusion type process, or whether it's free energy in some other system that's something I haven't thought of or we haven't considered or know about yet. I don't care, as long as it frees humanity and it's legit science and real science, and it helps educate and get a newer generation of younger people interested and inspired to study science and get into science. I don't care. That's all I'm about, man. All I'm about is the future and pushing science forward and making sure that humanity doesn't get stuck inside a dark age again. We don't get stuck with the Spanish Inquisition and Galileo and the Roman Catholic Church and these dogmas, and because this is where science gets held up and stuck at all the time, repeatedly throughout history. And we're at a remarkable time, man, with what is going on with Sabina Hossenfelder and all of science, man. She's calling out the string theorists. She's calling out Brian Keaton and all these people, man. And it's saying Brian Greene's nonsense. It's great, and she's this is a great time to be alive. It's a great time to be a physicist. It's a great time to be involved in physics, whether you're an experimentalist, a theoretician, or what have you. This is a great time to be alive, and I pray for one day we can get Sabina or Eric or these people on the podcast, or I can get on one of those podcasts. But for the meantime, I guess we'll settle for Candace Owens if she'd be so kind enough to get me on. That'd be awesome. Anyways, thanks for watching, everyone. It's a wild time, and thank you all. We'll catch you on the flip side. Bernie, you want to play us out with one of those cool little videos?
I'll see if I forgot one. I will try.
Yeah, those are awesome. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to get on Danny Jones'